right. Welcome back. Oh my gosh. Thank you for tuning in for another week. I have somebody very special here with me today. Her name is Brenda, and I have known her for a few years. I'm trying to remember what year we met. And I've just watched her make so many changes, and I feel super, super proud of her. So I just wanted to share her with you today. She's brilliant. The way that her mind works fascinates me. You'll see shortly when we get to talking. But Brenda, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Steph. Thank you so much. I also am here with somebody very special who has helped me immensely over the past 4 or 5 years get to where I am right now. And so my name is Brenda. I am a mother. I am a scientist. I guess I am a musician, an
Yes.
athlete, all kinds of things. Like we all are. So many facets to our life. And so I'm really pleased, to be here. Been quite the
Thank
journey.
you. It really has. All right. I would love for you just to share with us what life was like before you started doing personal development, inner work. What did it look like? How did you show up? What did you struggle with? Like all of that.
So, like I think many people that may wind up in your programs, I did have a difficult relationship with my mother.
Mhm.
And so my childhood was one of a lot of uncertainty, a lot of negation, a lot of volatility. And so I learned defense mechanisms that put me deep in the darkness of being completely unaware of how I showed up. So I
Yeah.
was reactive and confused, and I dove into work and the need to be successful at everything at some sort of crazy validation level.
Mhm.
Um, I attracted people that, weren't healthy for me, and
Yeah.
so my relationships continued to reinforce what I experienced at home. So my life until really about 2019
Mhm.
looked a lot like that.
Yeah, yeah. And when you mentioned work, you were just grinding and work and on the path to like, okay, what can I accomplish essentially, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am a PhD scientist,
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, and would regularly work 48-hour stretches to the point that people just knew, and occasionally 72, and not much room for fun ever.
No. No. I know that women listening are going to be able to relate to that because that is so common to numb or to avoid it all through work. And then you didn't mention this part, but maybe this was part of the drive too. If I get these accomplishments, I feel worthy and I feel good enough.
Correct. There
Yeah.
was elements of that, and the
Yeah.
other truly sad part for me
Yeah.
was I was not able to connect. And I felt like a spectator in my own life, and so in my personal relationships, as much as
Mm.
I adore my children, I felt like it was my job to give to them and not receive from them, and so
Mm.
I really do feel like I missed a large portion
Yeah.
of connection in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there a moment for you? You mentioned 2019, but where everything shifted or started to shift?
The first pivotal moment where I looked at myself was 2016. My
Yeah.
marriage was ending, and it was a string of relationships that didn't work and had a theme, and I'm like, what could be the problem here?" I'm like, "Must be me."
Is there a common denominator here?
And I really began, and at that point, I said, "That's it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna heal, I'm gonna learn about myself." I did dive into work, there was a lot to do, but I stopped interacting, socially and certainly having any romantic interest, and then it was 2019, I went on a cruise with my daughters, and work had been just torturous. I was at the
Mm.
brink of probably all kinds of illnesses. And I told myself, if my life doesn't change in the next year, I've got to stop. I've got to sell the business and be done with this because this is going to kill me. And so that was
Wow.
the real I'm changing things. And I did start working formally with you, I think in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. That sounds right. Wow. There's some parts of your story that I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I didn't know about like that moment in 2019 and how you were feeling right then and kind of this probably isn't the right word, but like that ultimatum that you set for yourself, like, okay, we've got to make changes or else this is what needs to happen. All right. So tell me about your inner work journey, what you noticed about yourself in the midst of working together, other things that you did that helped and where you are now.
So what I do notice is that a person, a life is integrated. There and all the parts touch and it works best when they all are the same, when you show up as the same person in every
Yeah.
facet.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was amazing because I started doing spiritual work and I started doing a leadership entrepreneurial work and the right kind in the right place. And there
Yeah.
was convergence with the work I was doing with you.
Yeah.
And so much of it really did center around this whole inner knowing, self-discovery, awareness,
Yeah.
and the liberation that comes with that.
Yeah.
And at every level, how that peeled off and revealed itself, and I thought it was miraculous, and there were times when I felt like I was fooling myself and I was making no progress, but
Mm.
at the end of the day, right now, my life is, filled with joy, filled with
Mhm.
freedom. I have, the ability and the desire to play,
Yeah.
and get out there and discovery and travel and do things, and I've given myself, um, compassion, and it's a wonderful place to be. I still have a ways to go because that's life, it's a journey.
Everyone does. It's a journey. Yep.
Yep,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
so much different, and the people that are in my life right now are beautiful souls.
Yeah.
it is yeah, I guess there's truth to the energy that you put out and what you attract, because I recently had a 60th birthday party,
Mhm.
and I looked around at every single person that was in that house, and it was so heartwarming and such a contrast to the toxicity that I surrounded myself with
Yeah.
previously.
Yes, yes, yes. I wanna talk more about play because, I mean, contrasting with the old version of you that would work 48, 72 hours straight and just was grinding to now I see you just allowing yourself to pick up guitar and have fun, and how has that been, like, as you reflect on who you were most of your life?
The early messages were, I had to be productive. I have, so many things I want to do,
Yeah.
and I had to earn any free time, and rarely did I grant that to myself. And because we all need free time, I would
Mm.
wind up stealing moments, maybe even at inopportune times. But it never felt. I never gave myself permission to fully engage. And so I would do things to blow off steam, but never really enjoy myself. And in these past few years, I certainly have tipped the scales in terms of uh, going to concerts, traveling, making friends, making time for friends, being very aware that it's time to stop working and let's go home and do something I enjoy. And what I find is certainly all the things that got done, maybe they don't get done as quickly, but it is one life, it is my life, and I
Mhm.
am enjoying it, and it's fulfilling, and I'm enjoying my work more, and I think I produce a better product.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm able to show up for people in
Mhm.
ways that I absolutely wasn't before, which is also, very fulfilling and joyful.
Say more about that.
So I can remember when I was self-critical and certainly I was much more critical of others and,
Mhm.
having a company and having employees, I my thoughts, whether or not I express them, but
Yeah.
knowing what I know about openness and awareness, I'm sure that those things leaked out.
Mhm.
But I felt, frustrated and, disappointed and stressed about how everybody needed to perform. And and, I'm sure that bled through into my parenting as well. And at this point, I'm certain that everybody is doing the best they can with what they have in any moment, including myself, and that's the big one, including myself. And my ability to see others' points of view, to be compassionate, try to understand their story. If something isn't working, it is not because that person is deficient. It's perhaps they're doing the wrong task or in the wrong place. And
Mm.
so it feels so much nicer in the energy I get back from people to be uplifting and to
Yeah.
feel uplifting, you know. And so
Yeah.
that's really just it makes the world a much more beautiful experience.
Yeah, 100%. I love how it's trickled into everywhere in your life, like personal and work, and that's so common. I remember a moment when you said something along the lines of like, I don't wanna open Pandora's box, or I don't wanna look in it, or I don't know stuff. And that is so common. Do you remember at that time what you were afraid of, and what advice would this version of you today give that version of you?
That's a complicated question. I do, recall that moment exactly, and I believe it was at a workshop. Um, and as I look back on my life, I, believe that although I might have wished that I would have come to a deeper self-awareness earlier, I think that my journey was exactly right for me, and I was where I needed to be at any moment. Um, there were certain factors in that moment when I was at your workshop that I think myself was protecting myself as
Mhm.
we want to dive in and learn about that. Um, I think what I would have told myself in that moment was to trust my intuition about the factors that were making me afraid to
Yeah.
look inside. That's my biggest
Mm.
lesson about that was I did not I lost confidence in my intuition.
Intuition. That is a good lesson. That's not what I would have expected you to say, so I'm glad I asked you. So often, women, men, probably men too, they don't listen to that intuition, and I actually have an episode coming out the week after this one where I'm going to share just a few tips to help people distinguish, okay, what's intuition versus fear or an intrusive thought, because it's so easy to feel confused about the two. So, I was trying to think, where did I think you were gonna go? That you were gonna find something that was so awful about you that you just didn't wanna know. I think that's the fear people have. Does that feel true for you?
It
That
does, and
yeah.
and it in that moment, that wasn't it, but that has guided and informed much of my life. I There were a number of, experiences from my childhood and ways that I was interacted with that certainly, had left me feeling
Mhm.
and caused me to create an entire persona because I was certain that if anybody saw who I really was, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, safe to say you don't feel that way.
Probably about 90% so.
90%. Okay. So we made a lot of
Yeah,
progress. Yeah.
a lot of progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a moment that popped up in my head when I heard you say that. I went for an interview at NASA and I was super nervous. And I was waiting outside the door because the person before me was having their interview, and there were a couple employees who would later be on my team or the same team as I. But I told them that I was nervous, and they said, "Oh, just be yourself." And at the time, before doing my inner work journey, that was the worst advice because I thought I had to pretend. I thought that myself was like all like be yourself. That was like all the bad things that I didn't want people to see. And that I had to control that and not show that. And I just so badly want people to know that that is not the case. Like all those not so shiny parts, that's not you. It's just protection. It's just like the defensiveness that came from everything that you've been through. And when you open Pandora's box, it makes life so much easier.
100%. And, I identify with that, uh, starting with childhood. I Because I felt those ways, I created a persona for myself.
Yeah.
I curated what the world would see, and that was exhausting. And
Yeah.
so what that did was it completely unmoored me from my own inner guidance system. I was
Mm.
constantly looking for how to be, right? To fit in, not to belong. And it was terribly, it was the opposite of being grounded. And so as I've become more self-accepting and more self-aware,
Mhm.
um, what has changed there is I show up as myself. Sometimes with trepidation, like, "Ooh, how are they gonna take me?" But it's better
Yeah.
to be that way, and if it's not my right, tribe, then it will just present. Nothing wrong with anybody. And so that kind of self-acceptance, um, is very simplifying in terms of openness, in
Mhm.
terms of letting yourself be seen. And I
Mhm.
think that that is honestly the greatest gift that two people can give to each other is to be seen and to want to see another person.
Yeah.
And that's where real connection comes from. And so once I didn't have to curate everything that I said, wrote, looked like,
Yeah.
that just liberated me and freed up energy for creativity, for play, for connection, for joy. That was the thing. There was not much joy before. So,
And so much now.
so much now, and gratitude, so much and it's not, it's, certainly learning a gratitude practice, and particularly when I was, pretty deeply buried under,
Yeah.
was sustaining. And I was, grateful for that practice, but now it's just an overwhelming sort of wellspring of gratitude. When I look at the particularly the people that are my life, the people that are my company, the way that people interact, the connections I have with, people like you and many people in my life, it's light, it's love, and that's, I think, what you were saying. We're not icky on the inside. We're light and we're
Mm-mm.
love. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Hearing that from you feels so good. I
It
just
feels
love
good here
seeing
too.
yeah, I love seeing all the changes that you've made. If is there anything else that you wanna share about your journey?
I think one thing that was interesting to me, and this is, it has to do with blind spots,
Yeah.
and in certain situations, I viewed myself. I said, "It's impossible for me to ever be a victim,"
Mm.
right? And so
Yes.
I there was no possibility, and it wasn't going to happen, and I was going to do everything to never let that happen to me. And what wound up happening was I created a blind spot. Um, where at least one person was treating me in a way that was very unacceptable. But I
Mm.
was like, "I can handle this. I'm not
Mhm.
the victim." And so I think
Mm.
being open to possibilities and in touch with reality, and of course we make our own reality,
Yeah.
but being more, objective about what we take in, being more self-aware and more willing to experience what is actually happening, it
Yeah.
helps us.
Yes, yes, yes,
Mm.
yes. Speaking of self-awareness, usually when I talk to people and I mention like how important self-awareness is, their first response is, "Oh, I'm self-aware." And there's a study that I wish I could remember who did it. Tasha Eurich, I think 95% of people think that they're self-aware. 5% are. Some crazy stat like that. And I think people, they witness themselves and they think that's self-awareness, but self-awareness is all the things that we typically hide from ourselves, the root cause, the why is this happening, what's underneath the behavior as well. And that is something that you have allowed yourself to just become so self-aware. I know I have a memory in my head of giving you homework around journaling exercise, for instance. And what you come back with, it's like, holy smokes, your brain just allows you to dig so deeply, which I find fascinating because as a scientist, I would think that the analytical part of your mind might block you, but you've created a deal with it where you allow yourself to go deeper. And not everybody is like that. Some people won't allow themselves to go there and see what's underneath. And I know that that has been a key part of your growth and your journey is that you have allowed yourself to do it. And I don't know, my thought is to anyone who stops themselves, like, what if there's nothing to hide from yourself? You don't, like there's just like you said, and I said a minute ago, like you're gonna find light and love. That's it. And
It's
anything else is defensive,ness, protection, yeah,
old messaging.
old
Yeah.
messaging. Yeah,
Well, thank you.
absolutely.
It's interesting because one of my current struggles is still between mind and heart, right?
Mm,
Analytical control and belief that my heart knows.
mm,
Uh, and that's sort of lifelong. But being a scientist, I think was also helpful, having a sense of exploration of like,
mm,
okay, let's make this as objective as possible. How can we peel this
yeah,
back? And there's some things I have allowed myself, and as the layers peel back, and a lot of
yeah,
the tools and the exercises we have done, they reveal things.
yeah.
And then there are connections. So I also firmly believe now the fundamental philosophy has changed from self-discipline and sort of running from things to running towards things and allowing myself
Mm,
to make connections based on activating pleasure centers in my brain. This feels good. I'm
yes,
going to keep doing this. And I think,
yeah,
I believe that people do best in that situation. It was not something I was raised with. It's new. And
mhm,
so as I uncover these things and I discover new things about myself or bring them to the group and there's rewards there.
mhm,
It sort of accelerates that. Uh,
yeah, yes, absolutely. Okay, one last question. If there was someone listening to the podcast, she's a high achieving woman like you, and she's asking herself, like, why am I like this? And maybe she has moments where she feels broken. What advice would you give her?
I would first of all say we are not broken. Sometimes we're burdened.
Mhm.
We come from situations that perhaps overlay some gunk on top of
Yeah.
our light. It's hard. Sometimes you take a step forward, a step backward, but keep going, and if possible, have confidence that the end is joy and liberation. Even when it feels like you're not going anywhere. It's for real. It's really, really real.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
coming. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on today, and I'm so grateful to know you.
likewise, I appreciate the opportunity. You're magic. You really are. So, yeah, you have a great mind and a great approach, and I appreciate, all the things you've done.
Thank you so much, Brenda.